Red alert, red alert, all points bulletin. God is missing.
What? That's crazy. God's missing? Where did he go? We're going to talk about that in a minute. He's missing. Oh my gosh. We're going to read Matthew 8. This is day 8 of Nobody's Fault podcast, where we first read the New Testament for a few minutes, and then we talk about stuff. So, who knows what we'll talk about? God's missing? Oh, come on. Matthew 8. Let me back up. Matthew 7 was the end of the Sermon on the Mount. Now we move in to something different. Jesus starts doing miracles. Miracles. Have you seen a miracle? Some people have. I'll tell you a different miracle when we get it. Matthew 8, the miracles. We're starting in verse 1, New American Standard Bible. When Jesus came down from the mountain, large crowds followed him. A man with leprosy came to him and bowed down before him and said, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." Jesus reached out with his hand and touched him, saying, "I am willing. Be cleansed." And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus said to him, "See that you tell no one, but go show yourself to the priest and present the offering that Moses commanded as a testimony to them." And when Jesus entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, begging him and saying, "Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, terribly tormented." Jesus said to him, "I will come and heal him." But the centurion replied, "Lord, I am not worthy for you to come under my roof, but just say the word and my servant will be healed. For I am also a man under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to this one, 'Go,' and he goes, and to another one, 'Come,' and he comes, and to my slave, 'Do this,' and he does it." Now when Jesus heard this, he was amazed, and said to those who were following, "Truly I say to you, I have not found such great faith with anyone in Israel. And I say to you that many will come from east and west and recline at the table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom will be thrown out into outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." And Jesus said to the centurion, "Go, it shall be done for you as you have believed." And the servant was healed at that very moment. When Jesus came into Peter's home, he saw his mother-in-law lying sick in bed with a fever. And he touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she got up and waited on him. Now when evening came, they brought to him many who were demon-possessed. And he cast out the spirits with a word and healed all who were ill. This happened so that what was spoken through Isaiah the prophet would be fulfilled. "He himself took our illnesses and carried away our diseases." Now when Jesus saw a crowd around him, he gave orders to depart to the other side of the sea. Then a scribe came and said to him, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus said to him, "The foxes have holes and the birds of the sky have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." And another of the disciples said to him, "Lord, allow me first to go bury my father." But Jesus said to him, "Follow me, and let the dead bury the dead." When he got into the boat, his disciples followed him. And behold, a violent storm developed on the sea, so that the boat was being overcome by the waves. But Jesus himself was asleep. And they came to him and woke him, saying, "Save us, Lord, we're perishing." And he said to them, "Why are you afraid, you men of little faith?" And he got up and rebuked the winds and the sea, and it became perfectly calm. The men were amazed and said, "What kind of man is this, that even the winds and the sea obey him?" And when he came to the other side of the country of the Gadarenes, 2 demon-possessed men confronted him as they were coming out of the tombs. They were so extremely violent that no one could pass by that way. And they cried out, saying, "What business have you come to us, Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before our time?" Now there was a herd of many pigs feeding at a distance from them. And the demons begged him, saying, "If you're going to cast us out, send us into that herd of pigs." And he said to them, "Go." And they came out and went into the pigs, and behold, the whole herd rushed down a steep bank into the sea and drowned in the waters. And the herdsmen ran away and went to the city and reported everything, including what had happened to the demon-possessed men. And behold, the whole city came out to meet Jesus. And when they saw him, they pleaded with him to leave their region. There's some crazy stuff there. Leprosy back then there was no cure for leprosy. And they get healed, and Jesus says, go tell the priests, have them inspect you, and then do the offering that's prescribed for the curing of leprosy. But there wasn't a cure. But there was an offering for a cure. Think about that. In the law that God gave Moses, there was a cure, an offering specifically for the day you get cured of leprosy, a disease with no cure. Think about that. That is a prophecy of Jesus coming. A cool thing about God is he tells us the future. He tells us the future. That's crazy. He wrote something in the law. So I don't know how many years later, 1,000 years later? No. Well, a long time later, that little prophecy could be fulfilled. There was a law for that, for the incurable disease, for the day your incurable disease gets cured. Think about that. I find that mind-blowing. Let's see. Then it says, many will come from east and west to recline at the table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Here he's talking about the Jewish people. And then it says, but the sons of the kingdom will be thrown into the outer darkness, that place where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. There's some things here that are hard to understand if you don't know some of the history of the Bible. And they thought they would be saved just by being Jewish. They thought that's all it takes. We're born saved because we're Jewish. Jesus came to change all that. He brought salvation to the whole world, to the Gentiles. And so they thought just by being born Jewish they're saved. No, things changed. Jesus changed everything for everyone for all time. And that's one of the cool things about the Bible. We have to realize how important of figure the man Jesus was, and the fact that he was God and man at the same time. And nothing's been the same ever since. Even our calendars, right? Oh boy, there's so many things here. The area where they were in, Capernaum, where all these people saw all these miracles, all these miracles happen. Later on, Jesus says of that area, why don't you believe? You saw the miracles, and yet you don't believe. If the people of Tyre and Sidon had seen the miracles that you had seen, and these were bad people back then that he's referencing, they would have repented and been saved. But you guys are so hard-headed and stubborn and spoiled. You saw many miracles right in your midst, and that wasn't enough to make you believe. I think we're still suffering from the same blindness, the same inability to see God at work. Let me get back out of this. Here's a quote from A.W. Tozer. If the Holy Spirit was withdrawn from the church today, 95% of what goes on would go on without anyone noticing. If the Holy Spirit was withdrawn from the New Testament church, 95% of what they were doing would stop, and everyone would notice the difference. I wrote down a term recently last month. I'm labeling the note-keeping system I have on the smartphone. I'm thinking I want to start calling it true journaling. And what I'm talking about is where Jesus was chastising the people for not recognizing what was going on, not seeing the signs of their times. They weren't able to see God at work and recognize what they were seeing. And this really came home to me tonight. A couple hours ago, I met with a guy. He's a little older than me, maybe 6, 7, 8 years older than me. We were having a talk about spiritual things and the state of the world, and we observed something unique. We're both believers. We're both Christians. And we're saying, like, why does it seem like it's only the Christians who can see what the heck's going on in the world right now? Other people just don't seem to get it. Like, why is that? And I think it's spiritual blindness. We're spiritually blind. We don't know how to discern what is going on around us, right? Well, the cure for being spiritually blind, I think, is to recognize what it looks like when God's at work. So this true journaling, I've been keeping notes, and I thought, okay, they're notes, but they're more than that. They're more than just my thoughts, and I thought there's something different. How would I describe that to someone? And I realized I wasn't trying to go back into myself or think about my feelings or my life or all that by writing all these notes. I was watching God. I was watching Him work in my life, and I started writing notes. I told you earlier on another one of these podcasts that one of the first notes I wrote down, God gave me a word. He said, I was out shoveling snow, being angry at the world. He says, this is how I'm keeping you alive, right? So I started writing notes. Like, okay, I got to shovel snow to stay alive, fine. I should write that down, right? And so true journaling, I think, is watching God and not yourself, okay? Don't watch society at large. You'll conform to them. Watch God and you'll conform to Him. Don't look at all the things that are going on inside of you, or you'll get lost inside of yourself. We need to rewire our brains. We need to refocus. We need to see things from a new point of view. Okay? We need to see God's point of view on everything. When you focus on God and bringing His kingdom to earth, you have a whole new perspective on every event, every person, and basically everything. We need to get to the end of ourselves, though, so we can start watching God. So, it was Matthew 5:3. Matthew 5:3. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The poor in spirit are the people who are broken enough to be at the end of themselves and realize their total dependence on God. We need to be broken enough so that God can make us complete again. carry your cross means dying. Dying to yourself. Start living for God. Die to yourself. There was an old song my brothers had me play very on when I was just learning Christian music by a band named Petra. It's called Killing My Old Man. I'm like, what? You're killing your dad? What kind of weird, what are you guys playing, having me play here? Killing my old man? I like my dad. No, they meant kill the old you. Kill the old you. Well, that's morbid too, right? No, that's what has to happen. We've got to get to the end of ourselves. It's a constant thing, getting to the end of yourself, if you're a human. Especially if you're a male human in the United States, and you have more money and time to waste than anybody in world history ever had. You got to get to the end of yourself. How do we do that? I think we have to start looking at what God's doing. Okay, so I realized I was trying to write what I was seeing God do in my life, in other people, in the world, just in every way. What's God doing? I was keeping notes like, He did that. God helped me make a whole bunch of house payments when I didn't have a job. Like, how did He do that? Or some crazy thing, you know. Wow. Are you amazed by God? Are you watching Him at work? I'm challenging us. Here's a really funny thing that happened. It's really kind of funny. I was having dreams of like struggle for a long time. Like I wake up, I'm just exhausted. Like, oh man, I'm dealing with broken things and broken people and broken bank accounts and stuff. I'm like, this is depressing. And I was having dreams about it. I said, God, can you give me some better dreams? Can you get, I'd like better dreams. You know what's crazy? He started giving me better dreams, more inspirational dreams. So I just had one a couple of days ago. I woke up, our dog started barking. I was kind of like, oh man, it's too early. God gave me one word. Just one word. But I knew it was from God, so I hurried up. I wrote it down. I'm watching God. The word was remember. I was writing stuff down to remember stuff. Like when He says, you got to shovel snow to stay alive. I wrote it down. I thought I should remember that. He's like, I want you to teach. I'm asking, well, teach what to who? As I get ideas, I write it down, right? It'd be fun to see if anybody starts doing that, journaling to watch God. I'm gonna call this true journaling. Now there's bullet point journaling. This is kind of a new thing. It's like blowing up. A lot of people are like, oh, bullet point journaling. I was kind of doing something like that by accident. And then there's another thing called second brain. Second brain is like these really elaborate note systems. Well, I'm like, yeah, I've been doing that. But I didn't know other people are onto this. I thought it was just me. I just thought it was special or something, right? I'm getting these elaborate notes. And like, wow. But God did a couple things that really fired up my own brain in the last few years. He switched me to a carnivore diet. Okay? So, more than 90% of Americans are becoming insulin resistant because we're eating too much sugar, too much carbs. We're eating slave and prisoner food. We're not eating like kings. Kings eat meat. I switched. So, your brain can burn sugar or fat. Fat is called ketones. So when you're in ketosis, you're burning fat. Your brain loves it, right? So I'm writing notes. I'm starting to get my thoughts organized. But then I start burning fat instead of sugar. My brain comes alive. I'm like, why couldn't I have had this when I was 30 years old or 40 or 50? I got to wait till 60 for my brain to switch on finally? Oh, great. I wasted a lot of time. So I'm trying to catch up. I hope you find that entertaining. There's a book I got a hold of. It's a psychologist. He wrote this, I think it was about 10, 12, 15 years ago. I got a hold of this book. It's called The Handbook to Happiness. A Biblical Guide to Victorious Living. It's by a guy named Dr. Charles R. Solomon. I'll put a link. I'm going to list some books here. I'm going to put a link in the video if I remember. He talks about how to have a messed up life, guaranteed. Have a self-centered life. Guaranteed success story to be messed up. Something's contradictory there. How to have a victorious life. Have a Christ-centered life. Do you know how many times I've seen this? I worked at a juvenile correctional facility for a while. My brother, Kelly, taught a Bible study there for over 20 years. He'd go in there one night a week and talk to kids about Jesus. He'd have these crazy testimonies every week. Cash, guess what happened? These witches were putting a hex on me, and they both became Christians. Another time, oh man, this kid was about ready to commit suicide. He just wrote his final farewell note, and he comes and he becomes a Christian. Kelly's like, every time. The kids got to the end of themselves and met Jesus. Okay? They're in a bad place. They're locked up. The last place before prison if they were adults. Okay? They got to the end of themselves. But we have too much money and too much time on our hands. We're trying to invent ways to waste time. Don't tell me you don't have enough time. It's all about entertaining us. Right? If you're doing entertainment and stuff nonstop, if you're watching TV, if you're scrolling on social media, you have too much time. Don't complain about not enough time. You live in the United States, you have too much money. Guaranteed. So don't complain about that. Okay? Get God-centered. Get Christ-centered. Christ-centered. Man, when we're Christ-centered, the world changes. I know it changes around me. The less I'm thinking about myself and the more I'm thinking about what God would have me thinking about, everything's better. The people around me are even happier. That's nice. That's kind of fun. Another book I'm going to put in the notes. Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Really good book. Another book, Practicing the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence. He didn't actually write it. Somebody wrote it about him. Practicing the Presence of Christ. Another one, I just listened to a great, I'll try to put a link to this too, a great documentary of Oswald Chambers, My Utmost for His Highest. The guy's a young guy, gets out of college around the turn of the early 1900s. He's just on fire for Jesus, right? He starts a Bible school. He's just getting that going and things are going great. He's married, has a young child, and as he's teaching, he's just like, oh man, he's on fire. He's like, can't preach enough. He can't get enough people into his school. And his wife knew shorthand. She could write 250 words a minute shorthand, right? So they're just taking notes and stuff. World War I happens. They have to shut down the school. He gets involved in the military, goes to Egypt, starts working with soldiers. It's miserable. World War I was just horrible. He's in Egypt, and eventually his wife and daughter come down there. And then in the middle of the war, he gets appendicitis. And there's no hospital bed, so he doesn't get the care he needs, and he passes away. It's like, God, a young guy, his life just cut too short. And I'm like, well, so many Christian people have talked about Oswald Chambers and the impact. It was from a book called My Utmost for His Highest. His wife, after he passed away, took all those notes, the things that she remembered him speaking. She took all the notes and made this book, and it's impacted people for 100 years now, close to 100 years. My Utmost for His Highest, Oswald Chambers, another good book. We need to get out of our self-focused mode. I'm talking to me too, all of us, man. So I'm talking to that farmer tonight, and I'm like, the world's waiting on us Christians. We can see the future. We have access to all the power we need to influence the future. We just need to step it up. We need to step it up. If we could each pick one person, 2 people, to really make a difference for, the world would start to change. That's what Jesus did. He picked a handful of guys. They changed the world. Each of us should be able to do that. One person. Let's start with one. Maybe it's us. Let's start with us. Anyway, write what God is doing in your life. Please, in the notes, tell me something that you've seen God do recently. What have you seen God doing? Like, that was God at work. If you can't think of one, you really need to start doing this. God's at work all the time. Me preparing for this tonight, I was like, man, God, I'm not coming up with, I want to use this time. And he's like, okay. I already showed you everything you need to know last week. Tonight, it's going on. I'm watching God. He just had me have this great conversation with a guy tonight. And like, we encouraged each other. We strengthened each other's faith, I believe. And we weren't focused on ourselves. We're focused on God. That was our conversation. That was fun. And I think we can make differences, each of us. So I'm trying to be positive, not in a fake way, but in a genuine way. We don't have to hide in fear right now, or the enemy wins. I'm not letting him win. Not in my life. Not in my life. I want to walk in joy. I want to radiate the love of Jesus to everybody around me. We can do that. Bring glory to God today. Start that. Remember what he's been doing in your life. Write it down. Honor him by writing it down. If you didn't see him do anything recently, you're not paying enough attention. That's a warning sign. I'm telling you. Self-diagnostic. Plug in that little meter. Well, what's wrong under the hood? Well, I ain't been seeing God do nothing. You're not looking. Start looking. You got to look. He's everywhere, all the time, in every situation. God is not missing. If you're a Christian, he's in here. He's in here. Connect with him. Start talking to him all the time. God, what should we do today? What would you have me do, God? What's your plans for me? Where can I help? What can I do? Can I help the neighbor's kid? The single mom? Maybe I can teach that kid how to change brake pads to help his mom get to work. You could do that. Handyman friend I know, he saw a guy just always standing around on a street corner at a place he was every day. He's like, do you need something to do? The guy's like, yeah. Well, come on, get in my truck. Let's go to work. He taught him a trade. One guy, right? He just observes somebody in his life. God put him in his path, but he had his eyes open. He's watching God. Just watching for God. Start watching. Is there something in your family that you could pay attention to and help? Is there something in your town? In your classroom? Is there one of your friends, a classmate? Just start watching God. Open your eyes. Take notes. Write it down. Remember what he showed you. I'm going too long. I better get out of here. See you tomorrow.